without a doubt. So moving on here, D, I think a move that kind of went a bit under the radar yesterday, and it's intriguing to both of us as we've gotten into it this morning before the show. Lane Kiffin, man, we talked about a high school quarterback they landed yesterday, but this one is intriguing because he could potentially help the team this season, as former D2 champ Trinidad Chambliss is headed to Ole Miss from Ferris State. Guy who has some dual threat ability. I'll pull up some clips here in a second, but listen, he can push the ball downfield. Obviously, it's a completely different level than what the from what the SEC would be, but someone who you could mix in with some packages here. Of course, Austin Simmons, excitement about him there in Ole Miss, but still a young quarterback. And you're talking about a guy here in Chambliss who's played a ton of football and won and been productive.
Yeah, and this is so interesting. I mean, when you look at Tennessee, which we just talked about with Nico, I wonder if this timing was a little different, if he'd be headed to Tennessee. Sounds like Ole Miss has been working this one for a while, but when you look at the player, 6'1", 200, he's got plenty of size, almost 3,000 yards, 26 touchdowns passing, over 1,000 yards, 25 touchdowns running, second team All-America. They won the championship, third in 4 years. So you got the winning pedigree, you got enough size, you got that dual threat ability, and even the character stuff. We talked about the Nico, how that transfer left, that turned off other teams the way it went down. You listen to Ferris State's head coach. He said that Chambliss kept him in the loop, was very respectful of the program, says a great young man, loves him more as a person than as a football player. And he says, basically like, look, we understand where we sit in the pecking order. This guy's a guy with D1 FBS interest, and he knew he wanted to play on that level, but he did it the right way as far as moving up. So the character part, the winner part checks out. Played basketball. You see the running ability. I really don't know why this guy's not at Tennessee, quite frankly. But if you're Ole Miss, this is a heck of an addition. You got Austin Simmons, who we've been watching since he was a young player here in South Florida. We think he's going to be an outstanding SEC quarterback. But behind him, it's like Clarkson. I'm not sure he could play at the SEC level. Maddox, freshman, not the most highly rated guy. Ole Miss tried to get in the mix with a guy like Deuce Knight. You add Chambliss. I think he's your number 2 quarterback immediately, but you could use this guy in packages. His running ability is legitimate. So this guy can play in the SEC this year in meaningful games just as a situational runner, as you see right here. I mean, the guy's dynamic, but again, the passing, I'm not sure this guy's not better than Merklinger. I'm not sure he's not better than George McIntyre right now at Tennessee. So,
and I'm surprised, honestly, that it took to this point for him to enter the portal, which shows you a bit of his, because you have to believe that there were programs that were calling him to get in the portal in January. No,
100%. So Ole Miss, great job by Lane Kiffin, evaluating, building the relationship, and convincing Chambliss to go to a situation where Austin Simmons is a pretty darn good quarterback with multiple years of eligibility, and he still convinced Chambliss, hey, I'm going to develop you. I'm going to give you a chance. You're going to help this team. And I think just the more you learn about this guy, the more you see somebody who I think can help Ole Miss, not just as an emergency kind of if something goes terribly wrong, but this year in a situational role. And if Austin Simmons doesn't play the way we think he's going to play, this guy will be ready to step up. Massive upgrade over what they currently had in the room. 2 years of eligibility there. So maybe, if Austin Simmons does show that he is the quarterback of the future at Ole Miss, which again, I think is probably likely based on what we know about Simmons, Chambliss can get some film on SEC wise, show he can play at that level and then transfer to a starting job as a senior. So makes a lot of sense. I just think Tennessee, man, I'm a Tennessee fan. I'm saying, how is this guy not in Knoxville? But shout out to Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin getting it done.
So that wasn't the only pickup that Ole Miss had. Recently here in the last 24 hours here is Tavoy Fegan, former Clemson corner, has also transferred to the Rebels.
Yeah, you look at this guy. This is a Tampa player. There's a big pipeline from Tampa to Clemson historically. This is someone whose dad played at Alabama when Dabo Swinney was a GA, so there's a connection there. Just, I guess, did not work out early. Clemson had some pretty good defensive backs, pretty good corners, some of the better corners in the ACC. So Fegan, I guess, was just disappointed with his playing time. I don't know the specifics, but he goes into the portal, and then Ole Miss more than happy to capitalize. Look what they did with a guy like Amos, who different kind of path with Amos, but didn't perform at the level at a blue blood program like Alabama that he wanted to play, goes to Ole Miss and becomes one of the best corners in the country. So I'm not saying this is the same situation, but Ole Miss has done a great job of not just getting the Walter Nolans of the world, who everybody's trying to get, but kind of sneaking by some talented guys and then developing them into players who end up becoming NFL draft picks and help Ole Miss win a lot of games. So this is a 4-year of eligibility player. He's a corner, which is a need position for everybody. A guy with some length at 6 foot 185. So I like what this move represents, which is really what Ole Miss has kind of made into a science. We don't have to be the number one recruiting team, but let's make sure we always had the talent and the physical traits and the NFL potential of a top 5 recruiting team. And that means getting a guy a year late and then developing him here. That's what we'll do. And that's what they're doing with Fegan. Again, victim of a tough situation to play as a true freshman in Clemson. It's hard to play there anyways because they got a lot of talent, but really a corner, they're loaded. So you're capitalizing on that frustration if you're Ole Miss. And I think it makes a lot of sense. As you see here, somebody with, look at this, you see the size on this guy. The corners with this kind of size that can make plays on the ball, that can run, they're not easy to find, man. They're
playing some safety here.
He was a 4-star corner in high school, number 25 corner in the country, like you mentioned, playing some safety there. And we'll see where they want him, but they got 4 years to figure it out, right? They're just getting talented bodies in the program and really recruiting a year late. You know, some of the guys that Ole Miss adds, if they would have gotten him in recruiting, it would have boosted their recruiting ranking. They just get them a year later and develop them. So shout out to Ole Miss, man. Whatever they're doing is working because they were one of the most talented rosters in college football last year. Probably, along with Miami, probably the biggest disappointment as far as teams that did not make the playoffs. But the roster, now we're seeing with the NFL and seeing some of these guys, was absolutely loaded. And these kind of moves are what reloads your roster if you're not landing top 5 class after top 5 class.
Yeah, and again, you get the 4 years, so it's you can pretty much develop them from the start, and you get good info, right? They're taking a guy who I'm sure that that this guy wasn't a the character was where it needed to be and all that. So exciting pickup for Ole Miss.